What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Mets'd podcast. We are joined today by Deesha Thosar, who has been covering the winter meetings, talking baseball, dropping articles all week. There's a lot to talk about here in the Mets world. Not a lot of great things, but I'm sure we're going to find out some more. Deesha, first off, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. And I think this is becoming like an annual thing now. We have you on right after the winter meetings.
Yeah, good to be on. I wish it was happier times for Mets fans, but it'll turn. It won't last forever.
Yeah, last year was all about Juan Soto and like the joy around that signing. And this
Yeah.
year we're like, wow, how are we going to pick up the pieces? So I think we'll just start there. So this week the Mets fans got their heart ripped out 2 days in a row, losing Edwin Diaz, losing Pete Alonso. I think my first kind of very general question is, how much, honestly, did the Mets want to keep these guys? Was it really just a facade for the fans to make it seem like they wanted them back, or was there real, genuine mutual interest with those two players?
I think definitely the interest for Diaz was much higher than Pete. And I think with Pete Alonso too, there was interest. They just weren't going to go there. They weren't going to go to the years that it looked like it was always going to end up at. I think last offseason was a little bit of an anomaly for Pete because he had the qualifying offer attached to him, not as much interest from other teams. This offseason, it was expected to blow up, and it kind of was a year in the making from the Mets with Pete of just kind of letting him explore, being super lukewarm. And we already knew from last year that Pete didn't like that approach from the Mets. He wanted a little bit more from them, and they never really changed their tune.
Did it feel like this came together quickly? Because it felt like before the winter meetings, we kind of heard nothing about Pete. We honestly heard that his market was developing slowly. And then all of a sudden you hear Mets, Red Sox 3 years, and then the Orioles come in with 5 for 155.
Yeah, it definitely happened swiftly, I would say, after he came to the winter meetings. I think that was a really smart move by him and Scott Boras. I'm trying to find out really whose idea it was, but there's been, right, this kind of misunderstanding about who Pete can be, his personality. Obviously, Mets fans know him well, but I think just looking from the outside, it's what is he just this goofy player? Does he have this drive to win? Does he work hard? What's his work ethic? I think as soon as you see Pete face to face, all of these things come across. So from his end, it was really smart for him to go to the winter meetings and be in touch with the teams that were interested. And if that's the only thing they're waiting for, then I can see how that would push a deal across the table, of course, after Schwarber went off the board.
It was a funny update, too, that Pete Alonso was driving to the winter meetings from his home nearby in Tampa Bay. Like, that was just kind of part of the funny Mets, like, reporting lore that we always get. But
Yeah.
the reporting that's come out since, too, is that both the Mets and the Red Sox seemed unwilling to go even past the 3 years. Did the Orioles kind of bid against themselves for Pete Alonso? Did they drive up their own price, or was there real need in their world to give Pete that fifth year that he's sought for the last 2 years?
Definitely a huge need for the Orioles. I mean, it's hard to state enough how huge of a deal this is for them because not only did they need a right-handed power bat like Alonso after the season they had last year, but they needed that sort of experienced veteran presence. Kind of wild to call Pete a veteran after covering him from his rookie season, but for a young team like the Orioles, that's who he is. And if you look at Camden Yards specifically, them bringing in those walls after 1 year or two of them being out, he's really going to rip it there. I mean, even as he went there as a Met, he was always blasting home runs. I think he's easily going to reach 500 home runs career hitting at Camden. So if you put all of that together, there's plenty of reasons for them to go to 5. And it would have made sense for someone like the Red Sox too. But I think I'm not sure that this contract is going to age well. I still think Pete betting on himself, covering him, and him always rising to the occasion matters. And I think that's hard to quantify sometimes. So I don't think it was that outrageous as people are making it seem.
We'll talk about Diaz a little bit more in a second, but to kind of draw similarities, it felt like the Mets were shocked with Diaz and how that happened. Was there any sort of shock with Pete, or they kind of seemed like they expected this?
Yeah, definitely with Pete, it was not only expecting it, but a little bit like, go ahead, you know. I think the years were shocking more so to the Mets. They probably thought he'd end up with 4 to a higher AAV than they were comfortable going with. And right, that we've heard that word being used so much with comfortability. And I think really there's just so much with the package of Pete Alonso that sometimes you do have to go over the line of being uncomfortable. We saw Steve Cohen do it with Francisco Lindor, his first splash after becoming an owner. We saw him do it with Juan Soto. For some reason with Pete Alonso, I mean, of course, Steve David Stearns is obviously running the ship and he's making the decisions. And if you look at just him doing it, it makes sense. So my question, of course, is where was Steve Cohen in all of this? His whole thing since becoming owner is the human touch, family relationships, having everyone come over to his house, and somehow kind of, especially this offseason, that has really gone out the door. I think it's expected after their disappointing season, but Pete Alonso was not the problem of that season. It was obviously the starting pitching staff.
No, he definitely wasn't. And your last few pieces, you've used the term indifference a lot to describe what's gone on with the Mets front office over these last, I don't even want to say few weeks, few days. We've heard other people in the media say that they're taking the emotion out of it. There's no more sentimentality. I heard one reporter use the term arrogance. Is this a perception that the David Stearns run teams have always had? Is this something that's now come to the forefront more recently? Is this just something us as Mets fans are now really starting to see after a season that didn't end with a lot of good favor compared to the last one that did end with a lot of good favor?
Yeah, I think this season and last season is more typical of how David Stearns run teams behave. Even he kind of expressed some regret after his handlings of Josh Hader with the Brewers. I'm not seeing much of a difference there anyway. And I think the 2024 season kind of put expectations for everyone a little bit out of the water, right? Like if something like this off season happened after the 2023 season, I don't think fans would be as frustrated or upset because that was also disappointing. But coming off of 2024, which was magical, special, great chemistry, going to 2025, that was whiplash and it hurt. So I think right now what we're seeing this offseason is definitely how David Stearns operates. But even having said that, I'm a little surprised because he knew what he was walking into, right? The Mets fan base is very different. Mets lore is very different. Attachment style is different than Brewers. So I think, I think fans just should absolutely forget about sentimentality and go for business only is not the vibe that Mets like. It's more of like a Yankees vibe of just professional show up and win. But I do still believe that winning, of course, will fix all of these problems.
Yeah, it does feel like as long as this team wins, I think the fan base will be happy with whoever is on the field because ultimately at the end of the day, me and James can't speak for everybody, but if we win, I'm okay if Pete Alonso and Edwin Diaz aren't here as long as we are winning. But that's the scary part because Pete left, and the day before we find out about Edwin leaving. And we've heard different things around, the news about what happened exactly with Edwin. One of the ones sticking out to me and James was that apparently Edwin might have been upset about the handling of signing Devin Williams and not keeping him in the loop. How much truth is there to that? And was he really upset with the Mets?
Yeah, it's definitely, I have not heard for a fact any of these things. There are definitely rumblings about it. And I think just knowing Edwin Diaz too and covering him, I can see how there would be a little bit for anybody. Any of these players to be as successful as they are, there's always a little bit of ego attached. And then, of course, Diaz hasn't really shown any of that. He's really, I would say, the nicest guy in that Mets clubhouse from the time I've covered him to a man. Everyone thinks that, but you never know, right? The one thing, and I think to this point, really up until 2024, the Mets had done everything right in terms of personal relationships with their players. Alex Cohen coming in, Steve Cohen coming in, and that just seemed to be gone this offseason. It's like they just really did not pay attention to this human aspect of, I really wouldn't have hurt the Mets to give him a ring right before. And hey, he's a free agent. So they, of course, didn't have to do any of that. So there's the argument, too, that why is Diaz being so sensitive about this? And he knew the deal. And if this is all it took to kind of piss him off and go to the Dodgers, there's definitely more there. I don't think it's just this. I think he wants to win. I think he could have been a little confused about the direction of this team now after seeing Nimmo walk away, after hearing kind of writing was on the wall about where Pete would end up. So I think it's likely a mix of all of it, and we might find out tomorrow. Diaz is having that press conference with the Dodgers, so he will definitely be asked about this. He'll have to answer for it.
It feels like there just had to be something there because on the surface, it was a $3 million difference. And with the reported deferrals, it seemed like there was basically no difference at all. And it seems like you alluded to at the beginning, this was the shock for the Mets not getting Diaz. Yeah. He was the one they prioritized. It's also funny to think about the juxtaposition between David Stearns and the last general manager, lead executive, Billy Epler, how that was like the hunky-dory offseason after 2022, which was it felt almost worse to some degree at the end of that season than it did at the end of this one. But like everyone got their big contract. Diaz didn't even have to enter free agency. It was funny to think about the comparison there. But with Diaz, how much of this was his maybe lack of trust in the direction of the team? Because he had the quote at the beginning of the offseason, I want to win a ring wherever I go. I want to win a ring and enjoy the time. Is this more of a referendum on the direction of the club, the direction of the franchise, how far away we kind of perceive them now to actually being championship competitors?
Yeah, I think having a season like last year has its ripple effects. In this year, I guess 2025 is what I mean, in terms of them coming out to such a strong start and then falling and collapsing in the way that they did spectacularly over the last 2 months, nothing being able to turn that around, I think has a greater impact than maybe people know. And right, we weren't, as much as I was in there in the clubhouse seeing these guys, I still was not on that team. Only they know how frustrating it was, how upsetting, how many times they switched in their heads of I can't do this anymore, right? And Diaz is one of those guys who's been there since 2019, who's been through the ups and downs. He's battle scarred. They were so close in 2024 to now feel that huge setback and not know if you're going to get that close again, I think can change a lot of minds. And I think just being around the Mets longer, right? We've seen the trend of Nimmo agreeing to trade his no trade clause, and Pete going, Diaz going. There's a trend there in terms of the longer tenured guys going, that there's definitely more to this story.
Yeah, it feels like the Mets are definitely trying to make a change of what this team looks like, what the core is, and relatively the core didn't actually accomplish anything. So I guess from that standpoint, kind of does make sense. Now, speaking of what this new core could be like, the way that the market's been moving, another big reliever off the market. The Mets have a pretty incomplete team right now if you look at this roster top to bottom. Do we think that David Stearns is going to get more aggressive soon, or he's just going to kind of play his game and sit and wait?
Yeah, it definitely feels like now Steve Cohen has fully just handed him the reins. I mean, we saw Steve Cohen step in at the end of the offseason last year and getting Pete Alonso back. So I'm not ruling something like that out if the pressure really accelerates to a level of, hey, we need to make a bigger move. But for now, I would say I'm expecting the next big Mets move to be via trade. I think they have the assets to do it. I think their outfield they can address via trade by looking at someone like Byron Buxton if he's still available. But David Stearns loves these kinds of trade deals. He loves these kinds of challenges. So in one aspect, it's good that there are so many holes to fill. But in the other side of it, if the season started today, they would not be able to go and play. There is no team to field there. And it's a little, I think if the plan is to go right off that Brewers blueprint of bring up the younger guys, let them have a runway, I just don't see that happening at the onset of the season. So they still need something right there, and they're obviously not punting. So I think in that way, there are going to be aggressive moves. I'm not sure that it'll be maybe the flashiest that everyone is expecting. And then listen, those can still happen at the trade deadline, right? Depending on where they're at, especially because Stearns loves those kinds of trade deals.
Is there any likelihood, or is it even like stupid to assume that there's a chance for us to go big game hunting? And if you had to, because we've been trying to do this the last few days here, ballpark maybe where this payroll actually winds up on opening day. How much lower is it than where it was last year? Is it even over the last luxury tax threshold, which we've basically never done during Steve Cohen's tenure with this team? Like, how much will realistically be added to this team monetarily?
Yeah, and that's the question, right? That's the question of the offseason so far. It definitely looks like it will be significantly lowered, and that is what they're trying to do, just even in a nutshell of trying to lower the luxury tax going forward, resetting it, especially after a year like 2029. Personally, I think because of this year and the potential for the CBA lockout next year, potential for a salary cap, this should be the offseason where they're spending a lot because they can. And do I believe that there will be a salary cap right now? No, but of course, a lot is going to change between now and next year. There could be missed games in 2027. So while Steve Cohen still can flash his money, his best asset, it's a little weird to me that he's not, especially given, of course, his net worth has only grown, even though he's operated at a loss since becoming owner. It's not really a worry from him. We've heard him be very laissez-faire about this just being a fun toy kind of for him owning the Mets. It's his day job, right? His real gig
Sounds
is
great.
with the stuff, right? So that's a little bit, of course, not lining up with what we've seen this offseason. He has always expressed wanting to do both. He wants to promote from within the farm system and also spend, a blend of both. They're not there yet. And I think if he's trying for this offseason to be the year that they're doing that, I think that's a big mistake.
The young guys seem to be a big focus for David Stearns right now, as you mentioned, and Carson Benj's name has come up a lot this offseason. Is Carson Benj one of the main reasons why a guy like Nimmo was moved off? Like, they have big hopes for him in 2026?
Yeah, it's definitely seeming that way now. If you asked me that immediately after Brandon Nimmo was traded, I would have said no way. I would have said like a little bit of posturing there in terms of wanting to add maybe someone like a Bellinger or a Kyle Tucker and kind of really go out, like you mentioned, big game hunting to fill that spot. And they could still do that. But I think Carson Benja, obviously, he needs a bigger runway. He's going to be competing for the role in spring training, but I'd be surprised if he earned it right outside of opening day, outside of a huge spring training. So I think these are holes that they have to fill outside. He's going to be exciting to keep tabs on as we get closer to February and March and a little bit of his minor league season again and kind of waiting for that major league promotion. But I just don't see a world in that he's going to be on the opening day roster. And it's going to have to be a proven, experienced competitor who can be better than what they just let go in Nimmo.
The only two guys, position players signed to this team to non-rookie deals past 2028 are Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor. Like, was this just the plan all along? Like, did David Stearns in his mind kind of have to figure things out in the fly last year, like being successful, like quote unquote, like ahead of schedule? And realistically, it's just, let me clear as much I possibly can. Like, I want flexibility. I want young players. Is that just really where we've always been heading?
I think he was a little more flexible last year in, hey, I'm new around here. Let's see your way meaning Steve Cohen's way, the way that it was run before. Let's use a little more money. Let's go get the big fish in Soto. I don't think David Stearns ever wanted to sign that mega deal. It's really not his MO. That was totally a Steve Cohen move. And now, right, he's going to be on the roster for years to come. He does have that opt out in a handful of years, Soto. But even beyond him being kind of outside of the norm, I think it didn't work right in 2025, that vision. So then it became, why don't we try it my way now and see how this goes? And David Stearns' way has been a focus on defense, on pitching, and not so much outfield, offense. And I think that is kind of going to be the blueprint that we see this season. Is it going to work in a stacked division, in a stacked league now? We saw, of course, what the Blue Jays did to even go toe-to-toe with the Dodgers in the World Series, and it was a mix of everything. They still had slug. So I think the Mets are definitely going to have to find a way to replace Pete Alonso's homers in some way if they want to be successful this year.
We've been getting a rumor about Wilson Contreras possibly being interested in a trade coming to the Mets. Has there been any more development in that, and how soon could these things actually start moving?
Yeah, I did see that. I haven't heard if there's more development in it, but I would expect as much as the trade market right now, there's a lot of chatter around it and it's more than recent years, but I do think those are going to take a little longer to materialize. The Mets have been one of the major players right now this offseason in trades. I think now they're going to step back again and be a little more reactive. Of course, they were the only team that did anything over the winter meeting. So there's the trade market aspect, I think, is a good lane for them to fill some of these holes, but I also would like to see them, right, like go a little bit in free agency and sign. They're going to have to do at least one big name here just based on how many holes that are on the roster.
Would this all have been different if the team literally won one more game? Like if this team was just in the playoffs last year, possibly 1 and 2 out through wild card, could this entire month have been completely different?
Yeah, and I think not only if they had won one more game, but I think the reason we're seeing, right, a lot of these players who performed well leaving, I think goes back to that 0-70 record in not having a single comeback win
It's
after the
crazy.
8th inning. And unfortunately, that does fall on the offense. And it is weird. It's really no one could wrap their heads around it. And Mets were the only ones that did not have a comeback win after trailing after the 8th inning. So I think they had plenty of chances. As much as you want to say, right, it was one win, one inning, one save from Diaz. We're talking about 0-70. So I think as that is happening, it's a little bit like befuddling in a way that not just why can you get the big hit late and close, but why was there no change even, right? Like within the clubhouse. I'm not talking about like tension and the drama, but more so why couldn't something click and turn there, even internally? So I think that is part of a little bit of this Mets blow up of breaking up the core.
Yeah, you just did mention, of course, that's been a hot topic this offseason, has been the Mets clubhouse and the drama that is there or may not be there. From your experience, what do you think about those reports? Is there really an issue, or this is just kind of how all major league teams operate and the Mets just happen to lose a little more publicly than others?
Yeah, I think personally, being in and out of that clubhouse all year, I really did not see tension. And I've seen tension in a Mets clubhouse by covering them since 2018. This did not reach any of those levels. This was not, Vargas throwing himself at a reporter. This was not Mickey Callaway getting it. I mean, those were tough times, and that's just not what happened. What happened was that they had an extremely disappointing season. And this report of Francisco Lindor and Jeff McNeil getting into an argument after their 7th consecutive loss. Of course they did, right?
Yeah.
It would be weirder if they didn't. I think I play soccer sometimes, and it just like I have one loss and I'm frustrated. I couldn't imagine the pressure and everything they're going through at that level and having to deal with it from publicly getting lashed. And of course, I think goes back to that 2024 season. If that just did not exist and we saw 2023 and 2025, I just don't think it would have been as much of a concern. I think this clubhouse tension and drama narrative is a little overblown. I think the Mets would have liked to see them maybe overcome it, right? I think it went on too long. As much as I want to say you can be frustrated after having a season like that, be frustrated after that 7-game losing streak, but someone in there has to be like, let's go, right? Where's the turn here? And we talk about Jose Iglesias, we talk about JD Martinez from the 2024 team. That presence didn't feel like it was there. So if there's any issue, I think it is just surrounding that aspect, that they didn't snap out of it fast enough.
You had great reporting on this whole clubhouse drama right when the season was ending. That was kind of diametrically opposed to some of the reporting that came out about a month later, and you reposted that article we talked about a lot in this show. The switch did never flip, though, and you talked a lot in your piece about the relationship between Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor. And reading through the tea leaves, it does seem like blatantly these guys are not friends, but it does seem like they are co-workers. Is the next level for this team, especially now with the microscope fully on them, because there's really no other veterans left on this team, how much of this is about not even their relationship to one another, but their ability to actually create like a really positive clubhouse environment?
Yeah, I think, right, it goes back to how much will anything change within these two stars. And just talking to Francisco Lindor about it this past season, I mean, he knew even when Soto was signed, from the things that he had heard about Soto, this is how he operates. He comes in, he does his work. He's not going to be a buddy bear hug type of person like a Pete Alonso or like a Brandon Nimmo. He just keeps to himself. And then Lindor actually made a surprising comment to me that was like, even knowing that when you see it up close on a day-to-day basis, it's different. It hit him a little differently. You can hear about it, but until you see it, you don't really know. And I think that adjustment period, right, won't exist going forward. Now everybody knows what to expect. Lindor also said to me, he's never going to change. This is who Soto is. Like, we shouldn't be expecting anything different out of him. And he was impressed by this aspect of Soto because he's so mature for his age. In a little bit of, I was never like that. And it took me, as in Soto, Lindor, sorry. It took Lindor a while to stop being a people pleaser. And I think now he's kind of settled and he's doing a little bit less of that in Queens, but that's part of his DNA in terms of being a human, and he's okay with that. Soto is very focused. He doesn't kind of pay attention to any of those distractions. And I think, if anything, just kind of ripping the Band-Aid off of how these guys operate with each other, that not existing will lead to that positive outcome like you've been talking about, because there won't be as much adjusting, at least between those two, but there's going to be a lot of turnover in the clubhouse, obviously.
Yeah, I also think, winning heals all wounds as well. Like, it's a lot easier to have fun and be buddy-buddy, and maybe Juan Soto gives Francisco Lindor a bear hug one day because they're winning baseball games, where instead down the stretch this Mets team had a horrible, horrible collapse. We've heard things about other great superstars in the league where they come in, they do their work, and it's not a problem. But you look at the Dodgers and Ohtani, they win baseball games. That seems like the biggest difference there. Last question I'll leave you with here is just expectations for the rest of the offseason here for the Mets. You were talking about that they've been very active in trades. Jeff McNeil's name has come up a ton as a name that could be moved, especially because of all the stuff that happened with apparently Lindor. Is that maybe the next domino that moves? Like, him and Senga seem like the hot names.
Yeah, I would put McNeil up there, expected to be traded, but not maybe as much of a high priority just because of his versatility. And I mean, David Stearns isn't alone in that. I think that's really a trend in the league right now, and just having those guys like a Cody Bellinger too, who can play several positions and play them well. So they're not. It would almost be like okay if he didn't go anywhere. Senga definitely is another one. I don't know about that one in terms of being buy low. And another one I have my kind of circled on my sheet is David Peterson. I can see this kind of being like a need for need trade, because I don't know how he would even fit into the rotation if they want to bring up some of these younger guys. Like we talked about, Jonah Tong is another, Christian Scott. Obviously, McLean is going to be in there. So they have a lot of runway for those younger guys. They're going to have to clear just a little bit more space. And David Peterson, as many chances as he's gotten, right? He's not that ace that the Mets rotation needs. I don't think they're focused right now on adding an ace. I think they should be. I think their focus is on someone like a Michael King. I think that would be a mistake. I think they should really be going for someone like a Skubal. And if that deal materializes, I think the Mets should be right in the middle of that. I think they have definitely enough assets to pull it off, and it would definitely make Mets fans happier than where they've been this week.
Yeah, again, we want to pull Mets fans out of the doldrums right now. And we've, of course, been banging the drum for Skubals all offseason. I don't know how you cannot be as a fan. But Deesha, got one more question for you before we let you go. I heard Jeff Passan on a podcast during the ALCS talking about the Imperial Pub in Toronto and a crew of baseball writers that you guys had, and some really fun nights in a local dive bar up there above the border as the Blue Jays are winning some great games. Mark and I are dive bar aficionados in New York over here. What makes a great dive bar, and what made that one so special?
This is one of the best questions I think I'm going to get all off season. Nice. But what made that place special was just kind of, I don't know what a better word for this is than the nastiness. Yes. I mean, there was carpets in it. Perfect. I'm not sure I've walked into a dive bar with carpets, so you could definitely smell all the smells. There were empty rooms with dust in it that have never been touched that we definitely ventured into. And really, I mean, the best part of it was the really, really nice owner, Jacob, who treated us very well, too well. But we had a great time. It was a great crew at the Imperial Bar. Also a big fan of dive bars.
Oh yeah, dive bars are the best. Carpeted in a bar.
Carpeted dive bars. Now I'm just on the lookout for those. Let's bring those back.
Love these stories. These are what makes baseball writers great. We appreciate you guys keeping that spirit alive.
And we appreciate you coming on, Deesha. Thank you so much for coming on again right after the winter meetings. Before we let you go, let everybody know where they can find you and what you're up to.
Yeah, you can find me at foxsports.com, all my written work, or on Twitter, aka X, at Deesha Thosar.
Awesome.
And thanks for having me on, guys. It's always a great time.
Thank you, Deesha. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next episode. Peace out.
Peace out, guys. Let's go Mets.